Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Ministry Show. So excited to be with you. I, as always, am your host, Nick Clayson, along for the ride. And in today's episode, I want to talk about this. Dude, my kids are obsessed with YouTube. What does this mean for the future? That's what we have on store, so make sure that you stick around. We're going to talk about Generation Alpha. We're going to talk about what's unique about YouTube, what I've found through a little bit of research, and as well as just give some, as I've done before, some stream of consciousness kind of thoughts. This is what some implications might be for you and for your church moving forward, and how you can rethink the way, potentially the way that you do ministry, or the way that you supplement what you do for ministry. Don't want you to forget that we are on YouTube, and today I'm going to share a couple of exclusive graphics on the screen, so make sure that you head over there if that's something that you're interested in. You can subscribe to that in the show notes. Subscribe, like the video, all those things will help. A rating or a review of the show, maybe even a share with a friend. All of that stuff really helps us get indexed, gets found, and I just want to say thank you. Like, we have had the last 3-4 months have been our biggest months by far, combined with almost all the other months before that. So we are well on our way to 1,000 downloads. So pumped about that. We are almost up to 200 subscribers on YouTube, and so again, very excited about that. Thank you guys for hanging out. I also want to toss this out there. If you're listening, head to the show notes, hybridministry.xyz, and I'm going to leave a link for the Q&A section. If you have questions that you want answered on this show, send them in. What are you grappling with? What are you wrestling through? And how can we help be of any sort of assistance answering some of those and just giving some ideas and thoughts about, again, if you don't know my story, I am a youth pastor, Nick Clayson, in the trenches at a church in Dallas-Fort Worth area. I am doing all the things. I am running the programs. We got Wednesday nights, we got Sunday mornings, and I am also someone who's just passionate about digital and hybrid ministry. Not because I want to forsake the gathering together, but because I want to add supplemental opportunities for you and me and us as a church to show up in the lives of our people. In my case, my students, in potentially your case, your congregation members' lives. And so that's the whole mission and desire behind what we're doing here at this show. And so that's what we're going to be exploring, is different social media platforms, church marketing tips, digital communication opportunities, church social media, and church growth ideas, especially talking about younger generations like Generation Z and Generation Alpha. And so that's in particular what this episode is going to be aimed at, is this idea and this realization that I'm coming to with Generation Alpha. If you don't know, Gen Alpha is the they are the youngest kids in our student ministry age right now, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Again, so thrilled to have you along in the show. I just want to let you know one last thing before we dive into the actual content. Free ebook, link in the show notes. It will help you and give you your guide from posting a TikTok from zero all the way to finished. Again, thanks so much for hanging out on this show. And let's dive into, dude, my kids are obsessed with YouTube. What does this mean for the church? First, we're going to talk about Gen Alpha. So let's go ahead and do that on the other side. All right, so Generation Alpha, the oldest Generation Alpha, was born in 2010. So a little bit of loosey-goosey math, that makes them 13 years old. That is what I often do for like age like that. All right, so like someone's 13 years old, I always, if you subtract 5, you'll know what grade they're in. That's a little pro tip, youth pastor tip that I use. So 13 minus 5 equals 8. That means that the oldest Gen Z is 8th grade. That means that 7th and 6th grade. So our entire middle school ministry is Gen Alpha. I might have said Gen Z, but I mean Gen Alpha. Generation Alpha is basically our entire middle school ministry. So youth pastors, if you're a youth pastor like I am, you've been trying to crack the code of Gen Z. Gen Z is high school, and in about 4 years, they're done. We're not worried about Gen Z anymore in student ministry, or we shouldn't be. And, you know, some churches are just now grappling with the idea of reaching millennials. Bro, millennials are in their 40s now. Like, I am a millennial. I am 33 years old. I'll be 34 in a couple of months. I am dead in the middle of my working life. I have children, and my children are not Gen Z. My children are Gen Alpha. So 2010 is the bracket. So I have two kids. They're born in 2016 and then 2018. So they're square in that Gen Alpha range. And so a couple of things that are unique about them. 2010, keep in mind about this, right? 2010, for those of you listening, those of you older, was the year that the iPad was introduced. You might remember that. I remember when I was in college and the iPad was introduced. And when the iPad came out, I thought to myself, wow, who is even going to use that? That's just an overinflated iPhone. It doesn't even do anything for you. Now, let me ask you this. How many iPads in your life have you owned? Me? 3, 4, 5 maybe at this point, right? Like at the time it was an exorbitant price tag. And I remember when it came out, we all in college, I was in college, all my friends were like, we're not ever going to get the iPad. That's ridiculous. I can do all the same things on my iPhone and carry it around in my pocket. Doesn't even have data. Then they did introduce one with data, but I had this really cool opportunity. I did an internship one summer in Connecticut, and me and the guy that I was staying with, my host family, we were chatting up one day about the iPad and its functionality, and he worked in Times Square. So I was in Connecticut, and he commuted down the train an hour into Times Square, worked at a bank in Times Square, and so he had the iPad as a thing to do on the train so that he could work and commute, respond to emails, all those types of things. He got the plan with data. So we're talking about it, whatever, and I get ready to leave after my 10 weeks of staying at their house and eating all their food, and they give me a going-away gift of an iPad, like a brand new iPad. And so I walk into school the next year as almost the only kid in the entire like sophomore class or junior class, whatever class I was in, that had an iPad. In fact, all my friends made fun of me because they talked about how like bougie or how like over the top I was for actually owning an iPad. And there was this hashtag that would go around. It's like hashtag Nick has an iPad. Like it was a joke. But my point in saying that is, remember when the iPad came out, how long ago that was, how recent that might feel to you. That was the same year that the oldest group of Generation Alpha kids were born. Back then when the iPad was created. So hopefully that gives you just a little bit of context, a little bit of frame of reference timeline wise about when they were born, when that shift from Gen Z switched over to Generation Alpha. And so my kids, my personal kids, are squarely in that Generation Alpha category, and they are obsessed with YouTube. And so much so that our Disney Plus, our Netflix, all those things are not as important as our YouTube Premium subscription that we just signed up for. In fact, I'm viewing YouTube Premium as one of my streaming services in my house. And quite frankly, the reason for that is my kids prefer to watch people like Ryan's World or Dude Perfect or what's the one, Rainbow Friends, like on YouTube. So much so that I was like, I want to get a premium so that I can keep them away from commercials. And on one hand, yes, Gen Alpha has a much lower tolerance for commercials than you and I might do, or you and I might have as people who've grown up with traditional broadcast TV. But also, like, bro, I'm letting them loose on YouTube. Like, I want to at least, and I'm in the age with them still where they'll listen to me. They won't be defiant intentionally or disobey intentionally. So they'll watch what I tell them they're allowed to watch, shows that I'm okay with them watching. But I had no control over the ads. And so I bought Premium to control the ads, i.e. get rid of the ads. And it's a nice little feature. I like it for my phone and stuff like that as well because it's my account and then their subsidiary kids' accounts. But they are obsessed with it. And so I was just, fighting with them again. They're like, hey, I want to be on YouTube. I want to watch it on YouTube. And I'm like, all right, whatever, that's fine. And they're just watching on our TV. They don't even really watch it on like their phones or they don't even have phones or devices really, but they'll watch it on just like our smart TVs, our Rokus. And I was like, why are they so obsessed with YouTube? Like, what gives? Like, what is the deal? And so I wanted to explore that, and that's what I want to explore in this podcast episode. So let's dive into the next section, which I'm titling, What Did the Google Machine Have to Say About This? Let's check it out. All right, like any good millennial parent, I did what we've all done before, right? And I had this idea, and so I asked Google, why do my kids like YouTube so much more than any other shows? And here's what the first result spit out. It said, YouTube allows kids to explore their interests on a whim deeply, easily, and with great entertainment. From week to week, kids can go from routinely watching videos about plant-based diets to learning a new language. And so basically what it's saying is like that YouTube has just a vast array, a vast library of ideas to allow people to kind of explore. And that's one of the things, especially with Gen Z, I think we started to see that shift. And I think that's going to be even just as true, maybe even more true of Generation Alpha in the land of they get to tailor make their experience. And I think that right there is going to be a massive shift for churches. I don't think that we should compromise on our standards or the truth of the gospel or the truth of the message of Jesus and the fact that he redeems us from our sins and gives us an opportunity to have salvation found in him. But we oftentimes equate that truth of the gospel, that truth of Jesus with like church has to look this way. And if you're not coming to church every single week in person for 52 weeks a year, listening to a pastor's sermon first and above all, and then maybe secondarily and ancillarily finding community, but first you got to make sure you go to that worship service. I mean, it's a very funnelific approach. We've all learned that marketing, the concentric circles, Rick Warren, and I don't know that like funnel approach is, or that like large room gathering experience is the top of the funnel anymore. I think the top of the funnel is what I'm trying to propose to all of you: digital and hybrid options and digital and hybrid ministry. And then if someone is interested in custom making their experience, they may not find, I'll just be honest with you, like, and don't crucify me for this, but like, I would rather listen to my pastor's sermon on a run or on my way to work than sit and listen for an hour just to a talking head. Like, I love my pastor, but like I can put it on 1.5 speed. I can get just about all the same experiences out of it. There's really no, and for me, I'm almost always late because I'm working on something ahead of time because my job is to work at church, and I'm leaving early because I have to get to something else to run something else. I'm not talking to almost like a single soul in the auditorium. Like, the one element that I really can't get is live praise and worship. That is the one thing that I don't think like Spotify or something else digital can replace. That being said, like, I do really want that connection, that community. Like, that's really important to me. And I would almost argue, especially for our younger and next generations, like they want that real, authentic, like opportunity for connection and community. They want that more than they want a large group gathering auditorium. So I say that to say, we have the message of the gospel, but we've equated the why or the mission, and we've tied it very tightly to our method. And we've said the mission and the method are one and the same. And if you don't love coming to church at 8:30 to listen to a sermon, you don't love Jesus. And while, again, I think that there are benefits of that, and I think that that's like in a lot of churches, that's the way things are done. And I think that that's not a bad thing necessarily. I do think that in this like create your own experience world, how are we going to reach people that can literally get on YouTube and watch whatever they want? Yet we say, but you got to do it this way over here. Like, how much longer is that experience going to last? And so continuing on, YouTube is the second largest search platform in the world. Like, right behind Google, and it's owned by Google. So not only is it the second largest, and it's not like it's trying to compete with the first one, right? The first one powers the second largest search engine in the world. Some people say it's the third largest, and they would put Google Images in between. Again, all three, top three, owned by Google. 400 hours of content is uploaded to YouTube every minute. 400 hours of content is uploaded to YouTube every single minute of every single day. That is bonkers to me. 1 million, or I'm sorry, excuse me, not million with an M, billion with a B. 1 billion hours of content are watched on YouTube every single day. Crazy, all right? This is from an article. I got a couple different articles that I used to get some of these stats from. I'll drop those in the show notes, so check those out. But television viewing figures from across Europe, this is a European article, are in decline. Children and young adults now watch a third less broadcast television than they did in 2010. So, like I said, that graph is up here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. If not, head on over to the show notes and you can check that out. But what I want you to know is that YouTube is changing the game in television, and I'm wondering what those implications might be for church. So let's dive into some potential church implications on how Generation Alpha and Generation Z's consumption of YouTube might be changing things for the church in 2023 and moving beyond. All right, so what are our church implications? What does YouTube and the rise of it have as far as churches are concerned? What are the implications? I mean, here's the thing about churches, right? Like, church is a social entity in a lot of ways. And like, I know we're like, no, it's about Jesus and it's about a relationship with him, and it's not religion, it's a relationship, all those things. That's fine. But at the core of the day, like at the end of what we're talking about here, like when people feel connected to a church, it's because they feel connected to the belief system, probably hopefully first and foremost, but then secondarily, the community that they've found there. And so if students, people, kids, parents, adults, anyone are not connected to the rest of the people, the rest of the larger organization of the church, they're not going to stay in the church. And so the reality about this is very simple, this is very basic. I'm not trying to say anything honestly really profound. To be a part of a church, you're either a part of it or you're not a part of it. Like, that's it, right? There's really only two options. You either feel a part of it or you don't feel a part of it. And there's all sorts of in between about people who maybe feel in the margins, are trying to get a part of it, can't get a part of it, are not really trying to get a part of it, and are not really connected, but other people, maybe like their parents, are super connected. There's all sorts of stuff in between, but at the end of the day, you either feel connected or you don't feel connected, okay? And like I said, there may be some gray, some nuance in there, but if you're not feeling connected, the reality is this, is that your like tie to your church, your interest in your church is not going to be that elevated based off of what we typically offer. And so how are we going to find ways, find inroads into our people's lives, potentially through YouTube? I said this a while back, 3 or 79% of people have at one point in time watched some sort of explainer how-to video on YouTube. That's a great spot for churches to just start. How to read your Bible, how to find accountability, how to pray, short form, long form clipped into short form. There's all kinds of opportunities there. And you're probably thinking, I don't have time for this. I get it. That is where like there has to be a vision and a mission, like fueling behind this idea. Like, we are going all in on this because this matters to Generation Z and Generation Alpha and the younger people in our church. It may not be the biggest like priority for your top givers and donors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, but it matters to the younger generation. So how can we do that? Recently, I was talking to a church, and the funniest part about this is that we had a planned meeting on the calendar with 2 youth pastors from another church in town, and they walked in as me and my boss and my other coworker associate were all filming a TikTok video, and it was one of those TikToks where it's like, do you know it or do you not know it? And the theme was High School Musical songs. And if you knew it, you went to one side of the frame on the camera, and if you didn't, you went to the other. And they walked in on us doing that. But of course, that led to a conversation like, what were you guys doing? How often do you post to TikTok? What's your philosophy and strategy behind it? But they told us that they were a youth ministry with 800 kids coming at one point in time. And they don't have those numbers anymore. And so that got me thinking, like, again, the 800 kids, they were a part of the church back in the day. Why are kids less and less interested in church? And I think it's because there's more and more opportunity out there for them. And a lot of times our response to that is, well, then we need to get kids off phones. We need to get kids off social media and get them back in church. And that could work. Like, that could modify their behavior to make that happen. But are they really there? Is their heart really in it at that point? And then the question I thought of was like, well, then what was the commitment level of the 800 back in the day? Was it just the best, most poppin' social gathering to come to? Or was it they felt forced, they felt expected, they had not as much, distraction opportunity as they do now? And so maybe the quality of those 800, though the quantity was there, the quality wasn't. Maybe now, same thing, the quality is there and the quantity is not. How do you raise both? And I think one way that you can raise both is to lean into this hybrid ministry. How can you, on YouTube, with 400 hours uploaded every minute, with 1 billion what was it? 1 billion hours of content watched every single day. With 1 billion hours of content watched every single day, how can you lean into that as a church and show up where it matters most? In people's everyday lives. What matters most is not showing up on YouTube, I want to be clear, but what matters most is showing up in people's lives on a regular and consistent basis, and maybe in the unexpected zones, i.e. not just the times you're expected to show up Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. Well, hey everyone, thanks so much for hanging out on this episode. I hope that just this kind of brain dump thought process, like live reaction to me exploring why in the world do my kids like YouTube so much? What does it mean for our churches helped? I still don't really know the actual why. I think it just gives them like their own control, their own algorithm selection. The algorithm shows them more and more of what they want to watch, and I think that they enjoy that. Some of the other streaming platforms are trying to sort of adapt that sort of algorithm AI thought process into what they're doing. I mean, so the reality is like they're still losing, right, to YouTube. Like they're still losing to YouTube. And so I just think that trend is worth noticing. And one of the reasons I notice it is threefold. One, I'm the church communications guy in our student ministry. Two, I'm a youth pastor, so I interact with Generation Alpha on a regular basis. Three, I'm the dad of Generation Alpha kids, like little kids, who are going to shape the future generations. And so those three things I'm noticing, and I hope that in me noticing them, you find that advantageous and useful for your church to not grow outdated and stale, but to continue to grow young and relevant to the students, kids, and younger people in your congregations. Again, thanks so much for hanging out. Hey, I do want to give you an update. In episode 48, I talked about a shift in my content, what I'm doing now, and I did recently notice an uptick in my engagement and my views by focusing more on quality over quantity. And so again, I said in that episode, it came down to just a margin or just like a capacity issue. And so the fact is, I have noticed that going up. And I did talk several episodes back about a posting service kind of tanking my YouTube Shorts views. My YouTube Shorts views have finally bounced back. I'm so grateful for it. And I think it's because I fed it more quality content that people would hopefully interact with and engage with more frequently. So I just wanted to give you that update. I've always told you I'm going to keep it real with y'all here, and so that's just me trying to do that. Hey, again, thanks so much for hanging out, and we will talk next time. And don't forget, and as always, stay hybrid.